My aunt took me in after my parents died and told me there was no inheritance, but then I found a safety deposit box key and discovered she had stolen $5.8 million from my parents' estate and used it to fund my cousin's lives while I worked 3 jobs just to survive. So I gathered evidence for 18 months and exposed everything at her charity foundation gala in front of 400 donors. I found the key taped inside my mother's jewelry box. It was a Sunday afternoon in February. I was cleaning out the storage unit I'd been paying for since my parents died 8 years ago. $47 a month for 96 months. $4,512 total, scraped together from tip jars and overtime shifts and skipped meals, just to hold on to the last pieces of my parents' existence. My Aunt Victoria had told me the storage unit contained sentimental items with no monetary value, old photos, my mother's costume jewelry, my father's tools, things that wouldn't sell but that I might want someday when I was more stable. I'd been waiting to be stable for 8 years. I was 26 now, working 3 jobs, living in a basement apartment with a roommate who sold drugs on the side. Stable wasn't coming. So I decided to finally let go, to sort through the boxes, keep what mattered, and stop bleeding money I didn't have. That's when I found the jewelry box, my mother's, the one with the dancing ballerina that played Swan Lake when you opened it. I'd loved that box as a child. I'd forgotten it existed. I opened it expecting cheap necklaces and clip-on earrings. Instead, I found a key taped to the velvet lining with a piece of masking tape that had yellowed with age. The key was small, brass, stamped with a number, 4471. And beneath it, in my mother's handwriting, a note. For Emma, everything is here. Don't trust Victoria. She's not who she pretends to be. I stared at the note for a long time, read it again and again. My mother had left me a message. 8 years ago, before she died, she had hidden a key and a warning in a jewelry box she knew I would eventually find. Don't trust Victoria. The same Victoria who had taken me in after the accident, who had told me my parents died with nothing, who had raised me alongside her own children while making sure I knew, every single day, that I was a burden she was generously choosing to bear. What had my mother known? What had she been trying to tell me? My name is Emma Fitzgerald. I'm 26 years old. I work as a waitress at a diner, a night stalker at a grocery store, and a weekend caregiver for an elderly woman with dementia. Combined, I make about $34,000 a year. I live in a basement apartment that costs $800 a month and smells like mildew no matter how much I clean. I have no savings, no car that works reliably, no health insurance. And apparently, there's a safety deposit box somewhere with my name on it. Let me tell you about my family, about the people who raised me after my parents died, about the woman my mother warned me not to trust. My parents, Michael and Sarah Fitzgerald, died in a car accident when I was 18. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit them broadside. They were killed instantly. I was a senior in high school, a month away from graduation, planning to go to college in the fall. I had no other family. My father was an only child. My mother's only sibling was her older sister, Victoria, who lived in a big house in the suburbs with her husband, Gregory, and their 2 children, my cousins Madison and Tyler. Victoria stepped in immediately. She handled the funeral arrangements, the estate paperwork, everything. She told me she would take care of me, that I was family, that she would make sure I was okay. Your parents didn't have much, she told me gently a week after the funeral. The house had a mortgage. There were debts. After everything was settled, there was nothing left. But don't worry. Gregory and I will take care of you. You can live with us. We'll be your family now. I was 18, grieving, grateful for any help at all. I moved into their guest room and tried to believe that things would be okay. They weren't okay. From the first day, Victoria made clear that I was not the same as her own children. Madison and Tyler had their own rooms. I had the guest room, which was also the home office, which meant I had to leave whenever Gregory needed to work. They had new clothes and electronics. I wore hand-me-downs and was told to be grateful. They had college funds. I was told to apply for scholarships and loans because we simply can't afford to pay for 4 educations. I didn't go to college that fall. I couldn't figure out the financial aid in time, and Victoria said she was too busy to help me with the paperwork. I got a job instead, then another job, then another. I moved out when I was 20, into the first apartment I could afford, a room in a house with 5 other people, all of us working poor, all of us just trying to survive. Victoria called my independence admirable. She told her friends at church that I was doing so well on my own. She never offered to help, never acknowledged that I was working 60 hours a week just to pay rent and buy food. Meanwhile, Madison went to a private university that cost $50,000 a year. Tyler got a new car for his 16th birthday. The family took vacations to Europe and the Caribbean. Victoria joined the board of a charity foundation and started hosting galas for wealthy donors. I told myself it was fine, that they had their money and I had my situation and the two weren't connected, that I was an adult now, responsible for myself, and it wasn't their job to support me. I told myself a lot of lies. But I never stopped wondering. My parents had owned their house outright, I thought. My father had worked as an engineer for 20 years. My mother had been a teacher. They weren't rich, but they weren't poor either. How could there have been nothing left? I asked Victoria about it once when I was 22. She got defensive immediately. Your father made bad investments. Your mother didn't understand money. The house had problems that cost more to fix than it was worth. I'm sorry, Emma, but there was nothing. I've told you this. Why do you keep asking? I stopped asking, but I never stopped wondering. And now I had a key, and a note, and a mother's warning from beyond the grave. Don't trust Victoria. The safety deposit box was at First National Bank, the same bank where my parents had their accounts. I'd known that much. What I hadn't known was that my mother had a box there that had never been closed. I walked into the bank on a Monday morning, heart pounding, and asked to access box 4471. The teller looked at her computer, frowned. This box is registered to Sarah Fitzgerald. Are you the account holder? She was my mother. She passed away 8 years ago. I just found the key. The teller's frown deepened. One moment, please. She disappeared into a back office, returned with a manager. Questions were asked. ID was produced. My mother's death certificate, which I'd obtained years ago for some bureaucratic purpose, was examined. Finally, the manager nodded. The box was set up with you as the beneficiary, Ms. Fitzgerald. Your mother made that arrangement when she opened it. Technically, you've had access rights since her death, but no one ever came to claim it. I didn't know it existed. The manager looked uncomfortable. The notifications would have been sent to the estate administrator, your mother's sister, according to our records. Victoria, the notifications went to Victoria. She'd known about the box for 8 years, and she'd never told me. The manager led me to the vault, found box 4471, used my key and the bank's key together to open it. I pulled out the box with shaking hands. Inside were documents, stacks of them, organized neatly in folders labeled in my mother's handwriting. Life insurance, Michael. Life insurance, Sarah. Investment accounts. Property deeds. Will and testament. For Emma. I took everything, carried it out of the bank in the metal box they let me keep, drove to a coffee shop, sat in a corner booth, started reading. What I found changed everything. My father had a life insurance policy worth $2.2 million. My mother had one worth $800,000, combined $3 million in life insurance alone. My parents had investment accounts totaling approximately $1.4 million, stocks, bonds, retirement funds they'd been building for decades. They owned their house outright. The mortgage had been paid off 3 years before they died. The property, according to an assessment from 2015, was worth $480,000. They had a savings account with $127,000 in it, a checking account with $23,000. Total estate value at the time of their death, approximately $5.03 million. And there was something else, a letter from my father, included in the folder marked for Emma. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, something has happened to your mother and me. We've prepared for this possibility because that's what parents do. We want to make sure you're taken care of, no matter what. Everything we have goes to you, all of it. The house, the accounts, the insurance policies. You are our only child and you are our whole world. Your Aunt Victoria is named as executor of the estate because that's what made sense legally, but we want you to know that we have concerns about her. She has always been jealous of your mother, always resentful that we built something stable while she struggled. We don't think she would harm you, but we're not certain she would put your interests first. If anything seems wrong, if Victoria tells you there's nothing left, if you feel like something isn't right, look for this box. We've documented everything. The truth is here. We love you more than you can possibly understand. We're sorry we're not there to tell you in person, but know that we did everything we could to protect you. Be strong, be smart, and don't let anyone take what's rightfully yours. All our love. Dad and Mom. I read the letter 7 times, until the words blurred, until the coffee shop closed and a barista gently asked me to leave. My parents had left me $5 million. And Victoria had told me there was nothing. I went home to my basement apartment, sat on my bed, stared at the documents spread across my thrift store comforter. $5 million. For 8 years I had worked 3 jobs. I had eaten ramen and skipped meals. I had worn shoes until they fell apart. I had taken cold showers because I couldn't afford hot water. I had avoided doctors because I couldn't afford treatment. And the whole time, there was $5 million that belonged to me. Where had it gone? I thought about Victoria's house, the renovations she'd done 3 years ago, the new kitchen, the pool in the backyard. I thought about Madison's college, the private university, the study abroad semester in Paris, the car she got as a graduation gift. I thought about Tyler's life, the private high school, the sports equipment, the summer camps that cost thousands of dollars. I thought about the charity foundation, the galas Victoria hosted, the designer dresses she wore, the reputation she'd built as a generous philanthropist. All funded by money that was supposed to be mine. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, looking at the evidence of everything that had been stolen from me. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront Victoria. Not yet. That would be stupid. She'd had 8 years to cover her tracks. She'd have explanations, excuses, lies ready to deploy. Instead, I was going to do what my father told me to do. Be strong, be smart, and don't let anyone take what's rightfully yours. I found an attorney, a woman named Denise Carter who specialized in estate fraud. I'd found her name on a website about inheritance theft, one of many I'd been reading late at night while my roommate was out doing whatever he did. I brought her all the documents from the safety deposit box, laid them out on her conference table, watched her face as she read through them. Your parents had a significant estate, she said finally, well documented, clearly organized. They wanted to make this easy for whoever needed to understand it. They were planners, my dad especially. He had spreadsheets for everything. That's going to help us. She pulled out one document. This is your parents' will. Very straightforward. Everything goes to you, their daughter, Emma Fitzgerald. Your aunt is named as executor, with instructions to manage the estate until you turn 21, at which point full control would transfer to you. I turned 21 5 years ago. No one ever contacted me about an inheritance. That's because, according to what you've told me, your aunt claimed there was no inheritance. Let me ask you something. Did you ever sign any documents after your parents died, legal documents about the estate? I thought back. Those days after the funeral were blurry. I'd been grieving, barely functional. Victoria had me sign some things. She said it was paperwork for the funeral expenses, death certificates, that kind of thing. Do you remember what you signed? Not really. She had a whole folder. She told me where to sign. I trusted her. Denise nodded grimly. That's what I was afraid of. Based on what you've described, I suspect your aunt had you unknowingly sign documents that transferred your inheritance to her control, possibly permanently. We'll need to investigate what was actually filed with the probate court. Can we get those records? Probate records are public. We can request everything. But I want to warn you, Emma, what we find might be worse than what you're expecting. It was worse. The probate records told a devastating story. Victoria had filed as executor of the estate within a week of my parents' death. She'd submitted the will, the asset inventory, everything properly. But then, a month later, she'd filed an amended inventory claiming that additional debts and liabilities had been discovered. The estate value was suddenly reduced from $5.03 million to approximately $80,000. Then came a series of documents I had apparently signed, authorizations for Victoria to liquidate assets to cover estate costs, waivers of my right to accounting, an agreement that I had received my full inheritance of $12,000 and was satisfied with the distribution. I didn't remember signing any of this. I'd been 18, grieving, trusting my only remaining family member. This is fraud, Denise said flatly. Clear, documented fraud. She created false documents about estate debts that didn't exist. She had you sign waivers you didn't understand. She stole your inheritance and created a paper trail to cover it. Can we prove the debts were fake? We can try. We'll need to trace where the money actually went, the life insurance payouts, the investment accounts, the proceeds from the house sale. The house was sold. Denise checked the records. 6 months after your parents died, sold to a company called Granite Holdings LLC for $380,000, below market value. Who owns Granite Holdings? She typed something into her computer, waited, her expression hardened. Gregory Patterson, your uncle. They'd bought my parents' house for themselves, using a shell company at a discount, with money that was mine. The investigation took 14 months. Denise brought in a forensic accountant named Robert Oyelaran. Together, they traced every dollar of my parents' estate. The life insurance payouts, $3 million total, had been deposited into accounts Victoria controlled as executor. Within 18 months, all of it was gone, transferred to various accounts belonging to Victoria, Gregory, and their children. The investment accounts, $1.4 million, had been liquidated and similarly distributed. The house my parents had paid off had been sold to my uncle's shell company, and then sold again 2 years later for $550,000. The profit went to Gregory. The savings and checking accounts had been drained within weeks of the funeral. Total documented theft, approximately $5.2 million. Additional theft from appreciation of investments that should have been mine, approximately $600,000. Total $5.8 million. I had been robbed of nearly $6 million. Where did it all go? I asked during one of our meetings. I can see the transfers, but what did they actually do with the money? Robert pulled out his analysis. Madison's college education, full tuition, room, board, spending money, study abroad, approximately $320,000. Tyler's private school, tutoring, sports programs, summer camps, approximately $180,000. Home renovations to your aunt and uncle's house, 3 major projects over 8 years, approximately $340,000. Vacation property in Vermont, purchased 4 years ago, approximately $425,000. New vehicles, 4 in total over 8 years, approximately $180,000. The charity foundation your aunt runs, she's made donations of approximately $1.2 million, which she then takes as tax deductions on her personal income. Investment accounts in the names of Madison and Tyler, trust funds, essentially, totaling approximately $1.8 million. Personal expenses, vacations, shopping, dining, entertainment, approximately $1.3 million over 8 years. I sat with those numbers. $320,000 for Madison's education while I couldn't afford community college. $180,000 for Tyler's private school while I worked 3 jobs. $1.8 million in trust funds for my cousins while I lived in a basement apartment. They had built their entire lifestyle on money stolen from me. Every vacation, every car, every designer dress, every charity gala, all of it funded by my inheritance. What can we do? I asked. It's been 8 years. Is there any way to get it back? Denise and Robert exchanged looks. There are several options, Denise said carefully. Criminal referral for fraud and embezzlement, civil lawsuit for recovery of stolen assets. The statute of limitations for fraud in this state is 6 years, but the clock doesn't start until the fraud is discovered. You discovered it 14 months ago when you found the safety deposit box. We're well within the window. Will they be able to pay if we win? That's the concern. They've spent a lot of the money, but they still have assets, the vacation property, the investment accounts, the house, your uncle's business. If we win a judgment, we can attach those assets. How much could we recover? Realistically, maybe $3 million in cash and property. The rest might never be recoverable, but there's also punitive damages. Given the egregiousness of the fraud, a jury might award significant punitive damages on top of the actual losses. And criminal charges. That's up to the prosecutor, but what we have is compelling. Fraud of this magnitude against a minor who was grieving the loss of her parents. Any prosecutor would be interested. I thought about everything I'd been through, every meal I'd skipped, every opportunity I'd missed, every night I'd cried myself to sleep in a basement apartment wondering why my life was so hard. And then I thought about Victoria, her big house, her charity galas, her reputation as a generous, caring pillar of the community. "There's something else I want," I said. "What's that?" "I want her to be exposed, not just in court. I want everyone who thinks she's a saint to know what she really is." Denise studied me. "That's a dangerous road. Public exposure can backfire. It can make you look vindictive rather than victimized." "I don't care how I look. I want the truth to come out, in front of everyone who matters to her." "You have something specific in mind." I nodded. "Victoria's Charity Foundation is hosting its annual gala next month. 400 donors, black tie, the social event of the season. She's being honored as Philanthropist of the Year." Denise raised her eyebrows. "You want to expose her at her own gala?" "I want her to stand in front of everyone who admires her and explain where the money for her philanthropy actually came from. I want them to know that she built her reputation on the back of a grieving teenager she robbed." Denise was quiet for a long moment. "We'd need to be careful, make sure everything is documented, make sure you're protected legally, but if that's what you want, we can make it happen." "That's what I want." "Then let's prepare." The gala was held at the Fairmont Hotel Ballroom. 400 guests, black tie, crystal chandeliers, chamber music, waiters in white gloves carrying trays of champagne. I'd bought a dress for the occasion, the first expensive dress I'd ever owned, dark blue, elegant, exactly the kind of thing I'd never been able to afford. I bought it with money I'd borrowed against the expected settlement. Denise had arranged it. "Consider it an advance on justice," she'd said. I walked into the ballroom with my head held high. I'd never been to an event like this, never moved in circles where people wore diamonds and discussed their charitable giving over appetizers, but I belonged here. This world had been built with my money. Victoria spotted me almost immediately. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, confusion, alarm. She crossed the room quickly, champagne glass in hand, smile fixed firmly in place. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "I bought a ticket. It is a charity event, isn't it? Open to the public." "Of course, but," she glanced around, checking who might be watching, "you didn't tell me you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you. Tonight's a big night, right? Philanthropist of the Year, you must be so proud." Something flickered in her eyes, suspicion, wariness. "Yes, well, it's an honor." "I'm sure it is. You've done so much good with your foundation. All that money you've donated. Must feel wonderful to be recognized for it." Victoria's smile became more fixed. "Emma, is everything all right? You seem different." "I am different. I've had some time to think about family, about what people owe each other, about what it means to be generous." "That's lovely. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to." "Actually," I said, "I was hoping you could introduce me to some people. I'd love to meet your donors, hear about what inspired them to support your foundation." Victoria's hand tightened on her champagne glass. "This isn't really the appropriate." "Aunt Victoria," a voice behind us. Madison, gliding over in a designer gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mom, they're ready for your speech." Madison noticed me. Her expression shifted from surprise to something closer to contempt. "Emma, what are you doing here?" "Supporting the family's charitable work. Isn't that what family does?" Madison's eyes narrowed. She'd always been able to sense when something was off. It was one of the few things I respected about her. "Mom, you should go. They're waiting." Victoria hesitated, torn between getting away from me and the concern that I might do something unpredictable in her absence. "I'll come with you," I said cheerfully. "I'd love to hear your speech." I followed them to the front of the ballroom, found a seat in the second row, right where Victoria could see me. The foundation's director introduced her, a glowing tribute to Victoria's generosity, her dedication, her tireless work on behalf of those less fortunate. Victoria took the podium, smiled at the audience, began her speech. "Thank you all for being here tonight. When I started this foundation 15 years ago, I never imagined it would grow into what it's become. But with your support, your generosity, your belief in our mission, we've been able to change thousands of lives." She talked about programs the foundation had funded, scholarships, housing assistance, job training, all the good work that 400 wealthy donors were paying to feel good about. "Philanthropy isn't just about writing checks," Victoria continued. "It's about seeing needs and meeting them. It's about looking at someone who's struggling and saying, I can help, I want to help. It's about being family to people who might not have anyone else. I stood up. That's interesting, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Because when I was struggling, when I didn't have anyone else, you told me there was nothing you could do. 400 heads turned toward me. Victoria's face went pale. Emma, this isn't. You talked about family, about seeing needs and meeting them, so let me tell you about a need you saw and chose to ignore. I walked toward the podium. Victoria was frozen, trapped between the microphone and a room full of her most important donors. 8 years ago, my parents died. I was 18, alone, grieving. My Aunt Victoria stepped in to help. She told me she would handle everything, that she would make sure I was taken care of. I reached the edge of the stage, climbed the steps, stood next to my aunt in front of 400 people. She told me my parents died with nothing, that there were debts, that after everything was settled, there was no inheritance for me. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the ballroom's AV system, the same way I'd confirmed I could do when I'd visited earlier, claiming to be part of the setup crew. But that wasn't true. My parents left an estate worth over $5 million, life insurance, investment accounts, a house paid off in full, all of it documented, all of it meant for me. The screen behind the podium lit up. The first document appeared, my parents' will, clearly naming me as sole beneficiary. This is my parents' will. Everything goes to their daughter. That's me. Victoria was named as executor to manage things until I turned 21. Instead, she stole everything. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Victoria reached for the microphone. Emma, you're confused. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I clicked to the next slide. Bank records, transfer documents, $3 million in life insurance, deposited into accounts Victoria controlled, then transferred to her personal accounts and her children's accounts within 18 months. More documents appeared, the fake debt claims, the waivers she'd had me sign, the paper trail of theft. She created false documents claiming the estate had debts it didn't have. She had me sign waivers I didn't understand while I was grieving my parents. She told me I'd received my full inheritance of $12,000. The actual amount was $5 million. I looked at the audience, at the shocked faces, at the donors who had written checks believing they were supporting a generous philanthropist. Where do you think the money for this foundation came from? The donations she's made, the events she's hosted. Do you think her husband's real estate business was that successful? I clicked to the forensic accountant's analysis. $1.2 million in donations to this foundation, all from money stolen from me. Tax deductions she claimed on her personal income. She built her reputation as a philanthropist by stealing my inheritance and then donating part of it to charity. Victoria grabbed my arm. Stop this right now. Or what? You'll steal my inheritance again. I pulled away from her, faced the audience directly. I spent 8 years working 3 jobs, living in poverty, skipping meals, wearing second-hand clothes, and the whole time my aunt was spending my money on vacations and renovations and her children's trust funds. I pulled out the last document, my father's letter. My parents knew. They knew Victoria couldn't be trusted. They left me a letter warning me to look for the truth. It took 8 years, but I found it. I read from the letter. If anything seems wrong, if Victoria tells you there's nothing left, if you feel like something isn't right, look for this box. We've documented everything. The truth is here. My voice broke. I steadied myself. The truth is here. $5.8 million stolen from a grieving teenager by her own family. Every dollar traced. Every lie documented. A lawsuit has been filed. Criminal charges are being referred to the prosecutor. I turned to Victoria. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Why did you do it? You were my only family. I trusted you completely. I would have given you anything you asked for. Why did you have to steal? She couldn't answer, or wouldn't. You let me struggle for 8 years. You watched me work myself to exhaustion while you spent my money. You built this whole life, this whole reputation, on what you stole from me. I stepped away from her, looked at the audience one final time. I'm sorry for disrupting your evening. I'm sure you came here expecting to celebrate generosity and community spirit. Instead, you got the truth about the woman you've been supporting. I hope it makes you think about who else might be hiding behind a charitable smile. I walked off the stage, through the silent ballroom. past 400 people who were staring at me with expressions ranging from horror to sympathy to fascination. Denise was waiting in the lobby. "How do you feel?" "Empty, sad, like I won something I can't enjoy." "That's normal. Justice isn't the same as healing." "I know, but it's a start." We walked out into the cold night air. Behind us, I could hear the gala falling apart, raised voices, people demanding explanations, Victoria's carefully constructed world collapsing. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now the legal process begins, the lawsuit, the criminal referral, all of it." "And tonight?" "Tonight you go home, you rest, you let the dust settle." I nodded, and then you start building the life your parents wanted you to have, with the resources they left for you. I thought about my parents, about the letter my father had written, about the safety deposit box my mother had hidden. They'd known, they'd prepared. Even in death, they'd tried to protect me. Now it was my turn to protect their memory. The aftermath was everything Denise had predicted, and more. The lawsuit was filed the Monday after the gala. Fraud, embezzlement, breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of assets, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The gala video had been recorded by someone in the audience. It went viral within 48 hours. Millions of views, thousands of comments, news stations picking up the story, headlines about the philanthropist fraud scandal and the stolen inheritance gala. Victoria and Gregory hired expensive attorneys. Their initial strategy was to claim that the estate had been properly administered, that I had been given what I was entitled to, that my accusations were the result of misunderstanding and grief. Denise dismantled every argument with documentation, the real will versus what was filed, the actual estate value versus the claimed debts, the signed waivers that an 18-year-old grieving her parents couldn't possibly have understood. The criminal investigation moved forward simultaneously. The prosecutor's office assigned a detective to review the evidence. Within 3 months, Victoria and Gregory were both charged with fraud, embezzlement, and theft. Madison and Tyler were named as co-defendants in the civil case. They had received money they knew, or should have known, was stolen. They'd benefited from the fraud even if they hadn't orchestrated it. Madison's attorney argued that she'd been a child when the theft began, that she couldn't have known where her parents' money came from. The court wasn't entirely sympathetic. She was 26 now. She'd had years to question the suddenly improved family finances. She'd accepted trust funds and college tuition without asking where the money originated. Tyler's defense was similar results. The civil trial took 3 weeks. Every document I'd found was entered into evidence. The forensic accounting analysis was presented in devastating detail. Witnesses testified about my living conditions over the past 8 years. Coworkers who'd watched me work 3 jobs. Landlords who'd seen my basement apartments. Friends who'd watched me skip meals to make rent. The contrast with Victoria's lifestyle was stark. Vacations documented on social media. Renovations photographed for design magazines. The charity galas where she'd worn designer gowns while I couldn't afford basic health care. The jury deliberated for 2 days. They found in my favor on all counts. Compensatory damages, $5.8 million, the full amount of the stolen estate plus appreciation. Punitive damages, $4.2 million, for the deliberate, calculating nature of the fraud. Total judgment, $10 million. Victoria collapsed when the verdict was read, literally collapsed, slumping in her chair, unable to stand. Gregory sat perfectly still, staring at nothing. Madison was crying. Tyler was holding her hand, his own face blank with shock. I watched them all, the family that had stolen everything from me, the people who had watched me struggle while they prospered on my inheritance. I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not triumph, not even anger anymore. Just exhaustion. The criminal trial came 3 months later. Victoria pleaded guilty to fraud and embezzlement. Her attorney had advised her that a trial would only make things worse, that the evidence was overwhelming, that a guilty plea might reduce her sentence. Gregory did the same, both of them standing before a judge, admitting what they'd done. The sentencing hearing lasted a full day. I gave a victim impact statement, talked about growing up in poverty while my aunt spent my money, talked about the opportunities I'd missed, the education I couldn't afford, the healthcare I'd gone without. My parents left me everything they had, I said, looking directly at Victoria and Gregory. They worked their whole lives to build something for me, and you took it, not because you needed it, not because you were desperate, but because you wanted it, because you thought I was a powerless teenager who would never find out." Victoria was crying again. Gregory stared at the floor. "I spent 8 years believing my parents died with nothing, 8 years ashamed of where I came from, 8 years thinking I was alone in the world, that no one had ever cared enough to provide for me." I paused, gathered myself. "But my parents did care. They planned for me. They left me a letter warning me not to trust you. They knew what you were, even if I didn't. And eventually, I found the truth they'd hidden from me." The judge's sentence was severe. Victoria, 12 years in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Gregory, 8 years for conspiracy and theft. Both would serve additional time if they failed to cooperate with asset recovery. They were led away in handcuffs. Victoria looked back at me once. Her face was streaked with tears. I didn't look away. "Was it worth it?" I asked, just loud enough for her to hear. "Was my inheritance worth 12 years of your life?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. The guards led her through the doors. I never saw her in person again. The asset recovery took time. The vacation property in Vermont was sold, $475,000 after fees. The family home was sold, $680,000 after the mortgage was paid off. Gregory's real estate business was liquidated, approximately $1.1 million in assets recovered. Madison and Tyler's trust funds were seized, $1.8 million total. Various investment accounts, vehicles, and personal property were liquidated, another $800,000. Combined with the civil judgment, I eventually recovered approximately $8.3 million. It wasn't the full $10 million the jury had awarded. Some assets had been spent or hidden beyond recovery, but it was more than my parents had originally left me. The punitive damages made up for some of what was lost. More importantly, I had justice. Victoria and Gregory were in prison. The truth was public. Everyone who had admired Victoria's generosity now knew the source of her wealth. The charity foundation collapsed, of course. Donors demanded investigations. The board resigned. The programs it had funded had to find new sources of support. I thought about offering to continue the foundation's work, using my recovered inheritance to fund the programs Victoria had used as cover for her theft. But I couldn't do it, not yet, maybe not ever. The foundation was too tied to Victoria's fraud. Every good thing it had done was tainted by where the money came from. Instead, I started my own foundation, the Michael and Sarah Fitzgerald Memorial Fund, named for my parents, focused on helping young people who had lost their families and were at risk of being exploited by those who claimed to care for them. We provided legal education, helped people understand their rights regarding inheritance and estates, connected them with attorneys who could review suspicious situations. In the first 3 years, we identified over 40 cases of estate fraud against minors. We helped recover approximately $12 million in stolen inheritance for people who'd been in situations similar to mine. It felt like the right use for the money, like something my parents would have approved of. I went back to school at 28, used part of the recovered inheritance to pay for the education I should have had a decade earlier, graduated at 32 with a degree in social work, started working full-time for my own foundation. It's been 6 years since the gala. I'm 32 now. I live in a house I own outright, bought with money my parents earned and saved for me. I drive a reliable car. I have health insurance. I never skip meals. Simple things, things most people take for granted, things that were stolen from me for 8 years. I'm in a relationship now. His name is David. He's a public defender who handles cases similar to mine. We met at a legal conference where I was speaking about my experience. He asked thoughtful questions. I gave honest answers. We had dinner that night and have been together ever since. He knows everything about my past, about the poverty, the theft, the years of struggle. He doesn't pity me. He respects me. He understands that what happened to me made me who I am. "You could have become bitter," he told me once. "You had every right to be angry forever. Instead, you're helping other people avoid what happened to you." "Anger doesn't build anything," I said. "My parents didn't leave me that money so I could be consumed by what was taken from me. They left it so I could live a good life. That's what I'm trying to do." Victoria was released from prison 2 years ago. She'd served 8 years of her 12-year sentence. Good behavior. participation in rehabilitation programs. The parole board decided she'd been punished enough. I didn't contest the parole, didn't make a statement, didn't attend the hearing. She tried to contact me once, a few months after her release, a letter delivered to my foundation's address. Dear Emma, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. What I did was wrong. I've had 8 years to understand how wrong. I stole your childhood. I stole your security. I stole your relationship with your parents' memory. I don't expect you to respond. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, the pain I caused, the years I took from you. If there's ever anything I can do to make it right, please let me know. Your aunt, Victoria. I read the letter once, then I burned it. Her sorry didn't give me back 8 years. Her understanding didn't undo the poverty or the struggle or the shame. Her offer to make it right was laughable. How do you make right what can never be undone? Madison and Tyler had avoided prison. They were civil defendants only, ordered to pay restitution from the seized trust funds, but they'd lost everything. Their parents in prison, their lifestyle exposed as fraud, their reputations destroyed in a viral video that would follow them forever. Madison works as a receptionist now. She lost her job at a prestigious marketing firm when the scandal broke. No one wants to hire the daughter of a famous fraudster. Tyler never finished college. He works in retail somewhere, I heard, trying to rebuild a life without the family money he'd grown up believing was legitimately his. I could feel sorry for them. They were children when the theft began. They didn't orchestrate it. They just benefited from it without asking questions. But I don't feel sorry for them. Not really. They knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not the full scope, but they knew something wasn't right. They saw me struggling while they prospered. They never questioned it, never helped, never wondered why their cousin was working 3 jobs while they lived in luxury. They made a choice, even if it was a passive one, and choices have consequences. I visit my parents' graves every month now. They're buried in a beautiful cemetery I finally found, the one they'd purchased plots in years before they died. Victoria had them cremated, but I discovered the remains were interred there, despite what she'd told me. I bring flowers, talk to them about my life, tell them about the foundation, about David, about everything they missed. I found the box, Mom, I say sometimes, just like you hoped I would. It took 8 years, but I found it. The wind rustles through the trees, the sun filters through the leaves. It feels like they're listening. I'm okay now, I'm better than okay. I have everything you wanted for me, the education, the security, the chance to help other people. I touch my mother's headstone, feel the cold granite beneath my fingers. Thank you for hiding the key. Thank you for warning me. Thank you for knowing that someday I would need the truth and making sure it was there for me to find. I always leave feeling lighter, like the visit has given me something I needed. Connection, closure, the knowledge that my parents are still with me in the legacy they left and the foundation that bears their names. The story ends here, but also it doesn't. Because the foundation continues, the people we help continue, the truth we uncover continues. Every month someone contacts us with a story similar to mine, a young person who lost their parents and was told there was nothing left, a family member who suspects a relative is stealing from an estate, a person who grew up poor while watching others benefit from money that should have been theirs. We listen, we investigate, we help them find the truth, whatever it is. Sometimes there's nothing to find. Sometimes the estate really was depleted. Sometimes the poverty was real and unavoidable. But sometimes we find what I found, a safety deposit box, a hidden document, a paper trail that leads to stolen inheritance. And when we find it, we fight, with lawyers and forensic accountants and every tool available. Because no one should have to live the way I lived while someone else spends their inheritance. Because the truth is worth finding, no matter how long it takes. Because my parents didn't leave me $5 million so I could be robbed. They left it so I could live, and now I'm making sure other people can live too. Last week I received a letter from a young woman named Jessica, 19 years old, both parents killed in a car accident 2 months ago, her uncle handling the estate, telling her there's nothing left except debt. She'd seen my video online, recognized something in my story, decided to reach out. I don't know if my situation is like yours, she wrote, but something doesn't feel right. My parents had good jobs, they owned their house, they were careful with money. How can there be nothing? I called her that same day, listened to her story, asked the questions I wished someone had asked me 8 years ago. Do you know if your parents had a safety deposit box, a locked file cabinet, somewhere they might have kept important documents? My mom had a jewelry box, an old one with a music box built in. She never let anyone touch it. My heart stopped for a moment. Find that jewelry box, Jessica. Look inside carefully, especially if there's a hidden compartment, especially if something feels wrong about the weight or the construction. You think there might be something there. I think your parents might have been just as careful as mine, and I think your uncle might not be telling you the whole truth. She called me back 3 days later, crying, holding a key she'd found taped inside the jewelry box. It was there, just like you said, a key and a note. My mom wrote for Jessica, "Don't trust Uncle Mark." We started the investigation that day, found a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Inside, documents showing an estate worth over $2 million, an estate her uncle had already started to loot. She's going to be okay. We caught it early enough. Her uncle won't get away with what he was planning. That's why I do this. That's why the foundation exists, not for revenge, not for justice alone. For Jessica, for everyone like her, for every young person standing at a grave, being told there's nothing left, wondering why their parents didn't love them enough to leave them anything. Sometimes the parents did love them. Sometimes they left everything they had. And sometimes someone is stealing it. We're here to find the truth, whatever it takes, however long it takes. That's my parents' real legacy, not the money they left me, the purpose it gave me. Find the truth, fight for what's right, don't let anyone take what's yours. And never ever trust anyone who tells you there's nothing left without showing you the proof. The key is hidden somewhere, the truth is waiting to be found. You just have to know where to look. If this story resonated with you, if you've experienced family betrayal or suspected someone is hiding the truth about an inheritance, I want you to know you're not alone. Every week we share stories like this one, real people, real betrayals, real justice, real recovery. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Join a community of people who refused to accept the lies they were told, who fought for the truth, who reclaimed what was rightfully theirs. Subscribe now, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, the truth is always hidden somewhere. You just have to find the key. You are worth more than what they told you. You deserve the truth. You deserve what your parents left for you. Subscribe, watch, find your truth. We'll see you in the next video.